Hi, Praggies, and welcome back to another episode of Pragmatic Optimists. I am State Senator Tiara Mack, and I am joined by attorney Rachel Cohen. And the news cycle has been very confusing for anyone who's paying attention because Zohran Mamdani was the big villain in the MAGA movement, and all of a sudden he had a love fest with Trump a couple of days ago when he went to visit the White House. He even had some productive conversations with Trump about why FDR was the best president and may or may not have convinced him that socialism is actually not a terror that we think it is, though there were several Democrats who did vote to condemn the ills of socialism. And just as an aside, the very Democrats who go and say that they are going to fight for working people are the very ones that then go and combat all of the ideas that will actually build a stronger working class and will stop ceding American profits and American prosperity to the billionaire class. And so, Rachel, while the memes are hilarious and while it is such a confusing evolution of the New York mayoral candidate who they have demonized and villainized and have had several racist news cycles about, what do you think is the significance, or what do you think is the importance of Mamdani going to the White House and having a conversation with Trump and also normalizing conversations with people that we vehemently disagree with, and also a self-proclaimed fascist, according to Trump himself, in that conversation? But what's the significance of Mamdani showing that we can work along lines of difference in this moment?
I think the most significant thing that I took away from the Trump Mamdani meeting was that people are not used to seeing people who are good at politics within the Democratic Party, honestly. Zohran Mamdani is a really exceptional political talent. I think that the most recent kind of level of charisma politician that we saw is early stage Obama, right? And so for many people in this country, they were not plugged in 2008, especially young people. And so just because that was a really long time ago, that's one of the things that I'm always having to remind myself, is that coming of age in 2008 politically was really formative for me. And so I'm excited for the people that are getting to come of age with Mamdani, because I think that the last 15 years has been people coming of age during the Trump years and during that kind of politic. And so I think it's a powerful reminder of what's possible when we vote for people who understand their policy deeply, who are excited about their policy, and who are also charismatic and good politicians. That said, I am not as rosy on the Trump Mamdani meeting as a lot of, I think, our peers are. And that is not for the sake of being a big pessimist. It's just because I think that one standalone meeting is not particularly indicative of anything other than Donald Trump being in a good mood that morning. One of my friends said, if Donald Trump had gotten up that morning and pulled a hamstring getting out of bed on his swollen calves, he would not have come out having this rosy press conference with Mamdani. And I think that's true. I also think that, to your point about talking about along lines of difference, I think that it's really useful to have Mamdani come in and articulate from the left's perspective why we have seen so many working class voters going back and forth between Bernie and Trump, or Mamdani and Trump. Because I think that, unfortunately, and I've been guilty of this myself, which is why I'm willing to say it, I think there are a lot of kind of political establishment types who watched those swings happen and were extremely dismissive of those voters and just thought, well, they don't understand the policies, they don't understand what's going on. And I will say that I have evolved to a point where I say, actually, you have people that are voting focused on affordability. And unfortunately, and worth pointing out, they're willing to do so regardless of what kind of racist rhetoric is coming out of the person talking about affordability, and sometimes even spurred on by the racist rhetoric coming from that person. But that in an electoral politics game, there is a real opportunity to shift people away from that, especially since Trump can't execute. Prices are higher than ever. I went to the grocery store the other night to buy some snacks to have friends over, and I left and was like, oh my gosh, I've spent $100 on, I don't even know what. And so I think that it's a good sign. It is indicative to me mostly of how good of a politician Mamdani is and how good of a mood Trump was in that day. But I'm curious your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things that was revealed in that conversation is them going to the FDR photo and like doing cute little photo shoot or whatever you want to call it also shows that our messaging on the left is popular. Many people want cheaper home prices. There is literally no place on the entire East Coast where you can be making $25 an hour and afford a 2-bedroom home. The average cost of a home in the United States now is over $400,000. That might be in Rhode Island, at least in Rhode Island, the average home cost is right around $500,000. The American dream is now completely a coin toss for many people. Baby boomers were the richest generation in history, and it was guaranteed almost 90% certain that baby boomers would have more money and more prosperity than their parents' generation. Now, millennials and Gen Z, it is a 50% chance that you may make more money than your parents, but you are also a 50% chance likely to make less money and have less prosperity than your parents. And that is what I think the image of Mamdani and Trump next to FDR shows, is that we are all talking about the same thing. I spend a lot of time in bipartisan spaces. I'm a member of the Future Caucus, and it is bipartisan millennial and Gen Z elected officials at the state level. And it can often be a hard and difficult conversation to talk with people who are MAGA Republicans. But we talk about things like maternal health. We talk about housing. We talk about climate. Well, we talk about energy, not climate. We talk about energy. And we talk about issues that I think are so common for our generation of millennial legislators and lawmakers that makes it easier to say, we're all talking about the same thing, but now we have to come to a solution together. How are we going to lower home prices? How are we going to ensure that the prosperity of my grandparents' generation is something that I can realize now in 2025? How can we make sure that the gains of the United States prosperity in the 19th and 20th century or something that we can realize now? And when you look at figures like FDR and you see Trump, who's got all of these talking points, maybe not the policy behind it, but he's like, yeah, groceries should be cheaper. We need to have affordability. And then you have Mamdani saying we need to have fast and free buses. We need to stabilize rents. We need to make sure that people who can't afford a $2.75 bus fare, don't quote me on that, New Yorkers, I don't actually know how much your little bus fare costs. And we need to have childcare. We're all talking about the same thing. How we get there differs, but once we start talking about the same problem and the same root cause of those problems, which I believe is corporate greed and a divestment from the middle class, and a politic that has not prioritized working people and or Black and brown individuals, who are often the ones who are villainized or who are demonized as the recipients of like welfare, when between you and I and all of our viewers, we know that it's more likely to be a white person who is the beneficiary of all of those things. I think once we can have normalized conversations about people from different parties coming together and saying, we both recognize a problem. We both recognize that we are going to be working on a solution together. How can I work with you? And how can I understand you better? And I think that was the powerful moment of that visit that I think is often going right. They're like, oh, he owned him. Or I saw tons of memes that's like, he owned Trump, or like this is like
I'm
so
also
cool.
just not convinced he owned Trump. Like, I want to kick this back to you, but I want to say, like, specifically something that really stood out to me was that moment where literally a journalist is asking Donald Trump, do you think Zohran Mamdani is a jihadist? And he just has to stand there while Donald Trump says, well, you know, people say things on the campaign trail. I reject the idea that Mamdani owned, that anyone like owned each other. One is the president, one is the mayor elect of New York City. It's a totally different amount of power. But I think that is worth noting, that I don't think we win when we focus everything on like their rhetoric is racist. But I also am not a supporter of, I think like many white leftists are like, and we should never even name that these things are racist. Bullshit. This is our base on the Democratic Party. Like, people of color deserve a party that actually stands up for them. And it is racist to have someone sitting debating whether or not the mayor elect of New York City, who went to fucking Bowdoin. Do you think Bowdoin is turning out jihadists? Like, oh my God. And so the sorry to anyone who went to Bowdoin who felt like that was slander, but honestly, your administration really hasn't claimed Mamdani as much as they should have. Anyway, this is an aside. I know too many people who went to Bowdoin, which is why I know that they would never be trained in
Jihadism.
Yeah, they're like, no, oh my God, I have to get off this train. So there are areas of common ground. There are things that we should be talking about and acknowledging as real problems that face Americans. And then we should be able to say, even discussing climate change as energy, right? Like there are areas of common ground that we can find, but then there are ridiculous proposals put out by the Republicans that are often counterproductive, that are often racist, that are beholden to fossil fuel interests. And when we present a better solution, that I think is how we win. But I want to kick it back to you. That's just my last thing that I wanted to talk about on that visit was the jihadist question, and you gave me the perfect opportunity. So Tiara, some pragmatic optimism about this common ground and commonality in the work that you do.
Yes, I want to say that I am optimistic that, again, I have spent time in bipartisan spaces. I'm going to be in another bipartisan space in December. And one thing that I think is not normalized on like mainstream media is that we're always fighting. The left and the right are always fighting. The radical leftists and the MAGA Republicans, they don't get along. And if we see each other in the street, we're going to start brawling. And that is just such a caricature of politics that I think so many people have internalized. And we used to have a politics of, I won't say civility because I don't believe in civility. I think we should like have our own, I think we should be able to productively debate people and debate the issues and not the person. Because I've talked about this before. I believe that everyone has the capacity to change, and I believe everyone has the capacity to do better. Am I going to be along that journey with them the entire way as they go to better? No, that's not my role. That's not my job. I'm not going to do it. Someone better than me who has lots more patience is going to be there, but I don't believe
someone with more privilege. Our white viewers, it's coming up on the holiday season. It's not admirable to opt out of holding your family members accountable. Because who else are you expecting to do that? Tiara? Like,
yeah, play Pragmatic Optimists at the Thanksgiving table. Play it during the holiday season. Forget the Christmas carols. Just play Praggies in the background. But I think it's one thing that makes me hopeful is that we are seeing again modeled on Fox News. They're like, it's going to be a brawl. Like I saw all of the memes leading up to it. They're like, they're going to fight. And then afterwards they show this image of two people who found common ground and a shared president. They were able to have a productive conversation and leave with the mutual understanding. They both love New York. If the only thing that Trump and Mamdani can agree on is that they both love New York, and that builds a productive working relationship between the federal government and the largest city in our country, I think that is a win. But it also shows plenty of other Americans that we agree on so much more than we disagree. And what we have to fight for and what we have to really ground ourselves in, and which is what I do as a legislator, or what I hope I do as a legislator, is find ways for us to fight for a future that we all want. I don't think anyone wants to live in a future where you see people experiencing homelessness, or you see families who are struggling paycheck to paycheck in order to put food on their table, or who aren't able to buy a home until they're 41 years old, because that's the average age of a homeowner right now. I don't want to see a generation of people who have less means and less prosperity than the generation before them. I think everyone wants that. Once we can agree on that part, then we can start fighting about the solutions. We can start fighting about how do we get the future that we want with policy that we can all meet about. Not meeting in the middle, because I do not believe in meeting in the middle, but we can meet about it and have productive conversations that lead to positive change. And that's what gives me hope. And that little glimpse, I don't think that's going to be the end of how we are starting to model on Fox News and on mainstream media, how people can be in the same space and not hate each other. But I think it's a positive and productive way to show that America has been divided for so long, and maybe if we stop with the divisive mainstream media rhetoric, we can actually focus on how can people on different sides of an issue come together and help realize a future that we all want to see collectively.
Love it. We're going to keep talking about it. Like, subscribe, follow along on YouTube, on Substack, on our personal social media to Legal AF, and we'll see you soon.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.